All right, so we're going to talk about a book titled The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And this is a book, so it has a lot of content in it, but mercifully, it's a pretty self-explanatory book that can be summarized in its seven main points, right? So um, the idea, the main idea of the book is in the title. There are seven habits, right? So habits being things that we do every day, um, actions that we take um, regularly, right? Ways that we conduct ourselves. Um, and uh, these habits help you be highly effective. So presumably all of us want to be highly effective, or um, even if we are highly effective, we want to be more effective than we already are. So the idea is that if you keep these seven things in mind, you will be more effective. And that's supposed to be general. All of these rules are general rules related to all aspects of life. So it's not effective at reading, or effective at writing, or effective at math, or effective at your whatever your job happens to be. It's effective in all aspects of life. So we'll talk about these seven habits. You can see the habits are be proactive, begin with the end in mind, put first things first, think win-win, seek first to understand, then to be understood, synergize, and sharpen the saw. And we'll go into detail about each one of those um, in order to better understand what each one of them means. So the first one, be proactive. So being proactive, we have to distinguish that from other words like being active, um, or being passive, right, which is the opposite of being active. And it's also different from being reactive. In fact, it really is proactive really is the opposite of reactive. So when some event happens and then you react to it, so your action's taking place after the event. Whereas being proactive, your action is taking place before that event. So you're anticipating this thing coming up. Um, so what are some good examples of this, and why might this be an effective technique? So let's say something bad is going to happen, or something bad could happen. Would you rather the bad thing happen and then you clean it up after the fact? Or would you rather prepare for that bad thing to happen so that when it happens, it's either not a big deal or it doesn't happen at all? And clearly, it's good to clean it up once a bad thing happens, and bad things will happen, and we'll have to clean them up. But um, it's obviously better not for the bad thing not to happen in the first place, right? Or for you to prepare so that it's not as bad. So what are some good examples of being proactive? A good example might relate to health, for instance. So being a person who brushes your teeth, that's being very proactive, right? Whereas if you are the kind of person who just gets cavities and then goes to the dentist after you get cavities, to clean up the cavity. That's being reactive, right? The bad thing has happened. The cavity's happened, and your teeth is harmed. Your teeth are harmed, and it's too late at this point to not have a cavity. You already have the cavity, so you just end up reacting to it. Versus what everybody says, brush your teeth. So, how can this relate to a college class? Because that's what many of us are listening to this lecture as part of a college class, right? So, in a college class, the most proactive thing you can do would be to do your assignments early, right? So how do you even know what assignments to do early? Well, you read the syllabus and maybe make a calendar and stuff like that, right? Doing assignments early has the benefit that if something comes up and you can't do them late, then it's already done, right? So that's really a better way to do things is earlier. You give yourself that early buffer. It's already done and that can't be taken from you. Versus if you're acting more reactively in a college class, then you're going to end up with a situation where the assignment maybe already was due. You realize on that day, you see the assignment was due that day, and then you're panicked, you're trying to get it done, or it already was due, it's already late, you're getting points deducted every day, that kind of thing, right? So being proactive obviously is going to be the better mode of being in that class. So, of course, being proactive is kind of hard. The reason being proactive is hard is because we're all very tempted to procrastinate. We always think that we'll have more time than we ever actually have. And it's hard just to force oneself to sit down and do the thing. It takes willpower, essentially, or something like willpower. And it also takes forethought, thinking ahead about the class, thinking ahead about your health or whatever it happens to be, your job, your family, etc., right? Okay, so that's being proactive. And appropriately being proactive is the first one because it's the thing you want to do before you even get started, right? So before anything even gets started, you prepare yourself, you be proactive. So that's the first habit. Okay, habit number 2. Begin with the end in mind. So regarding this one, so the key here is that before you even get started doing something, you usually want to know what the goal is. If you don't know your goal, then you can ask yourself, well, why am I even doing this? And if you can't answer the question, why am I even doing this? Then you should probably reconsider doing it at all. So if you find yourself doing something, so maybe you are going to school and you're taking a bunch of classes, but you don't know what your major is going to be. You don't know what job you want after school. You don't know what you're preparing for. That might be a reason. I mean, well, it is a reason to think about what your goal actually is. Because if you just are taking a bunch of classes, you don't know what your goal is. You have some vague notion that you're supposed to get a degree, but you don't really know what degree you want. You don't even know what subjects you like. you're just taking all the classes that sort of suit your schedule at the time. But then down the line, what is that going to give you? You're going to have spent a bunch of time, spent a bunch of money, and be nowhere closer to any actual goal that you want to achieve. So you've got to know your goal before you get started doing a task. Like a good example might be you're trying to build a house, but you just start nailing boards together without actually determining what you want your house to look like beforehand. So you just start nailing boards. Now, is that going to build a house? No, it's not going to build a house at all. At the end, you're just going to have a bunch of random boards nailed together. You spent a bunch of work doing it, and what did you get out of it? So you have to think in terms of your goals. And really, this comes down to what things you value personally. What are your priorities? So the good thing here would be to list out the priorities in your life. What is most important to you? And you can even think of it like, what do you want to do before you die? Because that's the end, right? The end in mind is that someday you die. So you want to get certain things done before then, and something's going to happen between now and you dying. You're going to do stuff, but there's only so much time, and there's like infinite stuff to do. So you have to choose the things to fit into your time. So those are your priorities. And if you can't think of priorities, then you should definitely try, because why are you doing anything without priorities? Why, like, are you just coasting along? You're just going with the flow. Why are you doing any of it? Everybody's doing it for some reason or other. So if you can't find an answer to that, then you should think about it. And then once you have your answer, you should assess whether or not what you're doing is actually related to those priorities. Are you spending all your time doing stuff that leads to your goal, or are you spending a bunch of time doing stuff that doesn't lead to any goal? Assessing your life like that, right? So you have to know where you're going before you get started. So for a class, you really should think in terms of, okay, what are the major assignments for this class? And what am I doing? So the ultimate goal of any class is to finish the class, right? So get a passing grade. So in order to get a passing grade, you have to do all the assignments, especially the major assignments. What are those assignments? Assess what those assignments are, and then assess what things need to be done in order to do those assignments, right? So that's sort of the process. You start at the end, and then you work your way back, thinking in terms of the big picture first. And you can think about that with an assignment itself, like an essay, let's say. Similar to the example with the house, you're not going to start writing an essay if you don't know what your essay is going to be about. So you have to choose what your essay is going to be about first. That's sort of like the goal of the essay, is what all of this is what all of these words are they going to be just random? Or are they going to be about something, about some topic? And that topic you can think of as like the big picture, the goal you're trying to achieve. You're trying to maybe defend this particular idea, this thesis, right? And that's your goal of the essay. And everything else in the essay is working towards that goal. So I would step back and think about that. Now, that leads us to the third habit. So the third habit, it's called put the first thing first. So what does that mean? We just talked about starting with the end in mind. So what does it mean to put the first thing first? This really um, refers to the notion that if you if you are going to do a big project, you have to do it a little bit at a time, right? Um, there's that quote, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. That's essentially what this is. You're not going to do a big thing until you successfully do all of the little things that add up to that big thing. So you can look at a journey of 1,000 miles. That seems huge. That seems daunting. But when it just comes down to, okay, well, actually, what is that composed of? It's composed of taking steps, taking a lot of steps, but taking steps, one step at a time. And taking a step is easy, right? Unless you have a disability or something that is preventing you from taking a step. Taking steps is something that we learn to do as a baby. So that's that's extremely doable. So what we want to do is we always want to frame a huge, seemingly undoable project into obviously doable steps. So that comes down to like a to-do list, breaking it down. Um, this is the same with a class. A class, you might look at the syllabus and think, oh my gosh, there are 100 assignments or something, right? There are 15 weeks, and that seems like a whole lot. But when you break it down assignment by assignment, day by day, it's like, okay, well, yeah, I can write a sentence per week for my journal, or I can, if I'm going to write a 3-page essay, I can write a page a day. That's easy. Or I can write a paragraph a day, or I can even break it down further. I'll write a sentence. I'll write a sentence, and then I'll consider that a win, right? Because a sentence is really easy to write. And really, it's just you can break it down into sentences, and you can even break it down into words. I think there's an author, James Joyce, who's a famous author. There's an anecdote that he would only write. I don't know if it's true or not, but the joke was that he would only write 7 words a day, and that was a good day for him, which is crazy to think about. But that's just how he did it. He could only, I guess that's all he could get out of himself on any given day. Now 7 words a day, you might have to write more than that, but it's doable, right? Like I've said more than 7 words in the last minute. We all could have written 7 words in the last minute. So that's an exceedingly doable task. And that leads to this idea depicted here, which is called the SMART goals. So SMART is an acronym. It stands for these 5 adjectives for what you want your goal to be like. So you have a goal. What should the goal be like? And so we have SMART. So it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So what are those things? So specific, you don't want your goal to be vague and general, right? You want it to be as detailed and specific as possible. So like taking a step, writing 1 sentence, that's a specific goal, right? A vague goal, and this would be a bad goal, would be, oh, I'm gonna write a little bit today. Okay, well, but you could ask yourself, what is a little bit? What are we talking about here? Is a little bit a page? Is a little bit a sentence? Is it 1 word? I mean, if you write 1 word, you wrote a little bit, right? But that might not cut it. That might not be enough. And you might sort of rationalize yourself. Yeah, I achieved that goal, but did you really? I mean, you set yourself a very vague goal. You weren't specific about the goal. And that leads directly into the next one, that it's measurable. So if I say I'm going to write 100 words, that's measurable, right? You can count those words. Um, and Microsoft Word will do it for you, frankly. So that's super measurable. And you can actually, with mathematical consistency, tell yourself whether or not you achieved that goal. If it's unmeasurable, so like I said before, I'm just going to write a little bit. Little bit isn't really measurable. It's super vague. You can also think of this in terms of other goals too, right? So um, I am going to lose 10 pounds. So that's measurable, right? What wouldn't be measurable is just to say, I'm gonna lose some weight. That's not measurable in the same way, right? You can lose 1 pound and that's some weight, but that's sort of you you're going to sort of feel the pressure of going down to the least achievable goal if you do things like that, because you're going to be able to sort of say anything is an achievement in that goal. But that leads us to talk about this next one, achievable. So what's an achievable goal? So you don't want to set yourself unachievable goals. You want to set yourself achievable goals. You don't want to say, I'm going to write 10,000 words today. Unless that's probably not achievable to most people. You would want to say something more like, I'm going to write 100 words. That's achievable. You know you can achieve that because you have done it before. Everybody's written at least 100 words in in a day before. As long as you've probably texted that many words today. And so that's highly achievable. 10,000 words, that's only achievable if you're like some kind of an expert writer. To go back to the losing weight example, saying I'm going to lose a pound this week, that's achievable, right? Saying that I'm going to lose 10 pounds this week is pretty much not achievable unless you're using some kind of like some kind of new technology that I don't know about. You got liposuction or something. That's not achievable naturally though, right? So, and you can push this to other aspects of life. So let's say your goal is to become a billionaire. Now that is measurable, and it could even be specific, because you want $1 billion. Is it achievable? Now this you might say, yeah, it's achievable. A lot of people are billionaires. We can count a bunch of billionaires, but is this really achievable? Now, if you look at the number of people who have actually been billionaires, it's vanishingly small. It's so small that it's a fraction of percent of people. So is it achievable? It's vanishingly achievable. It's and to the point where you probably should just say it's unachievable. Now, you may still want to shoot for that, but assign yourself a more achievable goal first. If you start with a more achievable goal, it might be easier to build your way up. So rather than saying I want to be a billionaire, say I want to be above average income. That's super achievable, right? Half of the people in the world are above average income. That you can do. and above average income, you're doing pretty well because 50% of people aren't doing as well as you. And then you can start saying, next I want to be top 75% income. Then you're in that. Then you want to be in that top quartile. That also seems pretty achievable, especially if you achieve the first thing first, which is being average. And then you could say, I want to be the top 90%, and then maybe even top 99%, and keep going, right? And those become more achievable as you go up. So I think it's better to frame your life like that than to say, I want to be a billionaire. Only I don't think there are more than like a fraction of a percent of people who actually are billionaires. So it's just not a thing you should think is achievable to. It's certainly not achievable to everyone, right? It's achievable to someone, but not achievable to everyone. So we shouldn't treat it like it is. And then realistic. This one's pretty obvious. We don't want to be unrealistic, so our goal should not be to become a wizard, because wizards aren't real. Our goal should be to become something that we can become, that is real. So if you want to become an engineer or a nurse or whatnot, those are real things. And the last one, timely. So this goes back to this goes back to us talking about considering how it can be done in a certain amount of time. If something is done in a timely fashion, it's done in a manner that you can actually sort of like you can set yourself in time. So what does that mean? We can talk about how setting yourself a daily goal is timely, right? That happens today. A weekly happens in a week. So those are good amounts of time. You don't want to set yourself a goal that would be like 50 years from now. That is not a timely goal. So that's the first 3 habits, and we'll talk about the next habits in the next video.